Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness remains one of the most enigmatic and influential novellas in the English literary canon. First published in 1899, the work explores the darkness that lies within men, masked by the facade of civilization. Drawing from Conrad's own experience in the Congo Free State, the story is both a journey up the Congo River and a journey into the human psyche. Through its layered narrative, Heart of Darkness questions the morality of imperialism, the fragility of reason, and the very foundations of Western culture. This is a literary work where language, imagery, and silence carry as much weight as action. Its structure, narration, and symbolic depth have inspired decades of critical debate. The story begins aboard the Nelly, a cruising yawl anchored on the River Thames near London. The narrator, an unnamed passenger, listens as one of the sailors on board, Charles Marlowe, recounts his voyage into the Congo River basin in Africa. As dusk falls and darkness gathers over the river, Marlowe's tale begins. Marlowe recalls his fascination as a child with the blank spaces on maps, especially Africa. When he finally secures a job as a riverboat captain with a Belgian ivory trading company, he views it as an opportunity to fulfill a lifelong dream. His aunt helps him obtain the appointment, and he travels to the company's headquarters in a European city described only as a whited sepulchre, a biblical allusion to hypocrisy and moral rot hidden beneath a clean exterior. Upon arriving at the mouth of the Congo, Marlowe witnesses scenes of chaos and inefficiency. He sees enslaved African laborers dying under the brutal rule of the Europeans, often neglected and abandoned. At the outer station, he meets the company's chief accountant, a fastidious man dressed in pristine white linen despite the surrounding squalor. The accountant mentions a Mr. Kurtz, a remarkable agent stationed deep in the interior. Kurtz is described in glowing terms, a man of great talent and potential, poised to rise far in the company's hierarchy. Marlowe is intrigued. As he continues his journey, he hears more about Kurtz, always in fragmented, exaggerated, or reverent tones. The man becomes a myth even before Marlowe meets him. At the central station, Marlowe learns that his steamboat has been damaged, some say deliberately, to delay his trip to Kurtz's post. During repairs, he becomes acquainted with the manager and other company agents, all of whom are more interested in sabotaging rivals than in running an efficient operation. Eventually, the boat is repaired, and Marlowe embarks upriver with a crew including a group of native pilgrims and the manager. Along the way, they are attacked by unseen assailants, and the helmsman is killed. As they near Kurtz's station, the atmosphere grows increasingly eerie. The jungle seems to press in on them. Human heads on stakes line the approach to the inner station. There, they meet the Russian Harlequin, a young, eccentric man who idolizes Kurtz and describes him as both charismatic and terrifying. Marlowe finally encounters Kurtz, gravely ill, thin and weakened, yet still radiating a powerful presence. Kurtz is carried onto the steamboat, though he tries to crawl back into the jungle, unwilling to leave his domain. It becomes clear that Kurtz has gone mad with power. He has allowed himself to be worshipped by the local tribes and has committed unspeakable acts in the pursuit of ivory. The wilderness has stripped him of all European pretenses. He is both a product and a victim of imperialism. As they descend the river, Kurtz's condition worsens. In his final moments, he utters the famous words, "The horror, the horror," a cryptic, damning judgment on either his own soul, the system he served, or perhaps humanity at large. After Kurtz's death, Marlowe returns to Europe. He is disillusioned and troubled. When he visits Kurtz's fiancée, referred to only as the intended, she is still mourning and speaks of Kurtz's greatness. Marlowe cannot bring himself to reveal the truth. Instead, he tells her that Kurtz's final word was her name. The story ends as Marlowe falls silent and the unnamed narrator reflects on the river, now shrouded in darkness, an echo of the Congo, flowing into the heart of an empire. Heart of Darkness is far more than a tale of colonial adventure. It is a meditation on the thin veneer of civilization and the primal forces that lurk beneath. The framing device, a story within a story, serves to distance the reader and create layers of ambiguity. Marlowe, an educated and skeptical observer, is both repelled and fascinated by what he witnesses, and his storytelling becomes an act of self-examination as much as reportage. At the core of the narrative is the figure of Kurtz. Initially painted as an idealist, Kurtz is ultimately consumed by his own ambition and the unrestrained power granted to him in the African interior. His descent into madness is not framed as an exception, but rather as a logical outcome of a system that strips away all moral checks. By isolating Kurtz in the jungle and surrounding him with worshippers, Conrad shows how imperialism enables the illusion of godlike status and, with it, complete moral collapse. The jungle itself plays a symbolic role, often described as alive, watching, whispering. It becomes a metaphor for the subconscious, the unknown and untamed aspects of human nature. Where European colonialists claim to bring light, Marlowe sees only shadow, death, and disintegration. Language and silence are equally important motifs. Marlowe's obsession with telling and withholding the truth underscores the novella's concern with moral ambiguity. His decision to lie to Kurtz's fiancée is often interpreted as an act of mercy, but also as a final admission that some truths are too unbearable to share. Imperialism is never glorified. Conrad portrays the European presence in Africa as hypocritical, exploitative, and hollow. The civilizing mission is revealed as a facade, beneath which lies greed, cruelty, and spiritual decay. The metaphor of the whited sepulchre applies not only to the colonial offices in Europe, but also to the ideals of progress and enlightenment that justify domination. Conrad also raises questions about identity and self-knowledge. Marlowe's journey becomes a psychological expedition, forcing him to confront the limits of his own beliefs. Kurtz is not merely a cautionary tale. He becomes a mirror that reflects the potential for corruption within all men. The line between European and savage behavior blurs until it disappears altogether. It is important to note the ongoing critical debate around Heart of Darkness, especially concerning its representation of Africa and Africans. Chinua Achebe famously criticized the novella for dehumanizing African characters and reducing the continent to a backdrop for European introspection. While Conrad critiques imperialism, he rarely allows Africans to speak for themselves, instead using them as symbols of primal nature or suffering. This tension continues to shape scholarly and literary discourse around the book. Structurally, the novella resists easy interpretation. Its dense poetic prose often circles around meaning rather than presenting it directly. This ambiguity is both its strength and its challenge. Readers are left with impressions rather than resolutions, haunted by what is suggested rather than declared. Heart of Darkness endures because it confronts questions that remain unresolved. What lies beneath the surface of civilized behavior? Can power ever be exercised without corruption? Where does morality end when all external constraints are removed? Through its haunting imagery, complex narrative structure, and philosophical undertones, the novella compels readers to reflect on the shadows within history and within themselves. For those interested in literature that interrogates the nature of human consciousness and the moral failings of modernity, Conrad's Heart of Darkness remains essential reading. Its impact on 20th century literature, film, and philosophy is profound, influencing works as diverse as T.S. Eliot's poetry and Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. If you enjoyed this literary exploration and would like to see more detailed analyses and summaries of classic and modern works, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for listening.